Hello and welcome back. Now it's time for us to set up Elasticsearch, and then maybe later we'll set up Kibana. But for now, we need to set up Elasticsearch. Now for Elasticsearch, we are not going to get the image from Docker Hub, but we'll just search for it. It uses a particular image, and we are going to use that. If you search here, Elasticsearch, right here, you will find this image, but this is, this is the Docker official image, but this is not the image I want to use. Okay, this is not the image I want to use right now. So to get the image, just open a new tab and you can search for Elasticsearch Docker image. So we get it from Elastic Guide itself, from the Elastic documentation. Okay, so search for Elastic Docker image. Don't use the one from Docker Hub. So go to install Elasticsearch with Docker. Okay, and here, this is a documentation we can use. Okay, so we are going to use this to be to set up the Docker Compose service for Elasticsearch. Okay, so it requires us to create a network. But first, and importantly, for our local development, we are only creating a single node cluster. Okay, for Elasticsearch, we are creating a single node cluster. It says if you're using Docker Desktop, make sure to allocate at least 4 GB of memory. Okay, so if you're using Docker Desktop, let me show you what you need to do. So you can just go to Docker Desktop, go to settings. Let's see, resources. Yeah. So for CPU limit, you can use the maximum you have, because later this will come in handy for us. So you can use the maximum that you have, and then you can increase the memory limits. For me, I'm using 12 GB. Okay, you can increase it. So these are the two most important. Use the maximum, and then you can increase the memory limit. You can even increase it to the maximum. Okay, so if you're using Docker Desktop, I think from the command line, I don't really know the commands, but you can search for it online how to do the same if you're on Linux, if you're not using Docker Desktop. Okay, and this is the image we need to use. Okay, so this is the image we need to use. And then if we scroll down, right now it's at 10.8.10.4. For you, it might be different, it might be something, but make sure now, this is something very important that I need to let you know. Okay, make sure that you are using Elasticsearch minimum version 8. If you use version 7, what we're going to do is not going to work for you. Okay, because a lot of things has changed between version 7 and version 8 of Elasticsearch. Now, at this point, if you search online for tutorials on how to set up Elasticsearch with Docker, or how to run Elasticsearch or with Docker Compose, you are going to likely see tutorials that are using version 7. Please don't use that. Okay, make sure that any tutorial that you want to use, make sure that the version is at least 8.0.0. Okay, make sure it's at least version 8. If you use version 7 or version 6, it's not going to work. You are going to get errors. Okay, so make sure the Elastic version you're using is at least version 8. Okay, because a lot of things have changed. Okay, and also, and like I already pointed out, we are going to be using a single node cluster for our local development, and then also we are going to disable security. Now, for version 7 of Elasticsearch, you could have been able to set up Elasticsearch without minding about security. Only when you want to go on production, you set up security, but that has changed. Even on local development, the way it was set up is security is enabled by default. So if you run it without having HTTPS, without security, without a valid SSL certificate, you'll get errors. So what we are going to do is we will disable security for our local development. Okay, for local development, we disable security. But once we go to the cloud, we are going to use the cloud version, which is secured. Okay, so those are the things I just needed to point out. Make sure it's at least version 8. And we are going to use a single node cluster, and we are going to disable security. Okay, so let's start. I'll create a new service. I'll call it Elasticsearch. The container name will be Elasticsearch container. Okay. The image, like I said, please use this image. Don't use the one from Docker Hub. Use this image. Okay. For you, it might be different. It might be a higher version, or it might be this current version, but make sure you use this right here. Okay. So copy this and paste right here. So we are using 8.10.4 at this point in time. For you, it might be different. The restart policy, always. Now we need to get to the important parts. Okay. Now Elasticsearch on it in itself uses, I think, the Java JVM. Okay. And there's some environment variables that we need to set up. And like I said, we don't need security enabled. We would have to disable security also when setting this up. We don't need that. We don't, because security requires you to have a valid SSL certificate that the Elasticsearch endpoint needs to be called using HTTPS. But we don't care about all that for our local development. Okay, so we'll have to disable security. Okay, so let's see if we can find some of the properties. Let me see if I can find some of the properties that we need. So it says start a multi-node cluster, yeah, with Docker Compose. Oh no, it's not specific. Okay, I think they are not specified here, but I already have them. We would need the Elastic username and Elastic password. We probably will use the default. Okay, we use the default. So for the username, Elastic default username is called Elastic, and then for the password, I think it's something called change me or something like that. We're going to see. Now let's add the environment variables. So the first property I want to add, this is because Elasticsearch uses the Java JVM. Okay, so we need to set ES_Java_ops. This is just for the Java virtual machine. Make sure you have Java on your machine. Okay, and then I will set these properties. Let me just copy and paste it. Okay, I'm not a Java guy, so I really have no much idea about how all of this work. Okay, how they work. Okay, that is the first property. Then the next property is bootstrap.memory_lock. I'll set this to true. This is used also by the Java JVM machine in conjunction with Elasticsearch to set a memory lock. Okay, so these two properties. Now we need to set the discovery type. Remember I said we are going to use a single node cluster. So the environment variable is called discovery.type, and it's going to be called single node. This is sufficient for our local development. Okay, and now we need to start disabling the security features because by default it's true. And Elasticsearch version prior to version 8, so version 7, version 6, security was disabled by default, but now in version 8 security is enabled by default, so you have to disable it. If you don't disable it, it will request it for a valid SSL certificate. Okay, we don't need to do all of that. So let me add the property. It's called SPAC security enabled. This is going to be false. Okay, so by default it is true. Okay, so now I'm disabling it so that it doesn't request for valid SSL certificate. And then I'll add 3 other properties. Okay, let me just add these 3 properties. Okay, you can pause the video and add all of this. Okay, so This is we are enabling this, yeah, because we don't have TLS and we don't have SSL certificate, so we need to enable this so we can, with enrolling this, setting this security enrollment enabled, monitoring collection enabled, API key enabled, we Kibana can access Elasticsearch, and then we can see we can monitor our resources on Kibana. Okay, so these properties are important, but the most important is this: we are disabling security. Okay, and now let's go ahead and add our ports. Okay, Elasticsearch runs on port 9200. Okay, now this is the port it uses for us to access the Elasticsearch REST API. But if we are using multi-node cluster, if we are creating a multi-node cluster, because for us it's a single node cluster, which is sufficient. But if you are creating a multi-node cluster, the port that Elasticsearch uses to communicate between those clusters is 9300:9300. Okay, but this is the one that is most important to us because we're using a single node cluster. But if you are using a multi-node cluster, maybe you can research online how to set up multi-node clusters. Then you can add this. I think you can read the documentation here. Okay, so maybe it will give you better understanding. You can see the default password is usually change me. Okay, and then let's add our volumes. Now for the volume, it's going to be the Docker volumes, yeah, the folder, and then Elasticsearch -data. And now where do we map the data to? Let's see if we can find it. Let me start from here. Where do we map the data to? Let me see. The Elastic. Yes, so this is where we usually map the data to: usr/share/Elasticsearch, then /data. Okay, so this is the main directory where the data file will be stored on Elasticsearch. So we want to map our local directory to this directory, then /data. Okay, so this is where Elasticsearch stores the data, but we want to map that part to our local Elasticsearch data. And then one last thing is to set a network. So Docker network create Elastic. So we need to create a network. So I'll set networks and I'll call this Elastic. Okay. And now for this, we need to define the networks down. Okay. So networks, the network name is Elastic, and I'll set the name to Elastic as well. Okay, so whenever you define a network, it's also appropriate to define a network down here in this network section. Okay, so I'm going to stop here for this video. We've set up the service. In the next video, we're going to set up Kibana and then we'll try to run them.